Hello and welcome to episode 35 of On My Studio Table. I'm just taking a moment to share with you a couple of items that I've been thinking about talking about for a little while, and they are the quilts that are in this room. This is the master bedroom in our house, or the main bedroom, and on the wall is a quilt that I made in memory of my mother, and on the bed is a quilt that I made to celebrate my dad's 80th birthday some years ago. Both have since passed away, but they are a lovely memory of them as a part of my life and the family that I'm a part of. So the quilt on the wall I started just before my mother passed away, when she was very ill in hospital, and we were staying with my sister at the time, and it really helped me to process what was happening. I finished it a few months later. The applique and the quilting are all hand done, and the assembly was done by machine. But I really enjoyed the process. It really was something that I enjoyed doing in spite of the circumstances, and it is very much a treasured possession. We went through a period of house sitting for a while, and I took this with me to put on the bed so it would feel like home. On the bed itself, which I'll just move the camera a little bit, is another quilt which I made to celebrate my dad's 80th birthday. That was some years ago now. He would be in his 90s if he was still alive. But I got everyone to sign a heart square. So I made some squares with hearts fused on them with fusible web, and then with a permanent pen, everyone signed their name who was attending the gathering. We had a whole weekend at a very nice camp place in Port Sorell in Tasmania. My sisters and I stitched some of them while we were there, which was lovely, and then I finished it after I came home. I did get it professionally machine quilted because it is a big quilt, and I thought that it might be a bit difficult for me to do. But everything else is either hand or machine done, and I will show you some close-ups shortly. So this week has been interesting. I have not been well. I have back issues, which I hinted at in the last video, and they really flared up in this past week. I injured it when I was in my 20s, and every now and again I have difficulties with it. So I've been taking it easy, and I'm going to take it easy with this video as well. But I do want to share a few things with you, and today I am feeling quite a lot better, which is good. So I hope you enjoy what I've got to offer you, and that you'll be inspired to try something yourself as well. As we come into this room, you'll see how the quilts really suit this house. We've only been in this house just over a year. My husband built most of it, and I'm so proud of what he's done. And the wall is actually recycled timber, and there's a company in Launceston that we bought it from, and they do different finishes on it depending on what you prefer. So we asked for a barnwood finish, and I think it all works together really, really well. Now if I go closer, you'll see that the quilt is hung on the wall with wrought iron curtain rods, or oak wrought iron curtain rod, and I think it really suits it. The quilt is totally my own design. I was inspired by people like Roberta Horton and Gwen Marston, and I'll put some links to their work below this video. Roberta Horton in particular studied vintage quilts, and she found that this idea of perfection and perfect lines is actually not really true of most traditional quilts. People substituted fabrics as they ran out of them. Not all the lines were straight. They compensated by just cutting little pieces to slot in if something didn't hang straight. And it's just charming when you look at the details in these vintage quilts. And in Roberta Horton's books, she does show that really clearly. And she taught these methods just cutting by eye without using rotary cutters, and doing freeform design for a long time. So it's worth looking her up. Gwen Marston also, especially with using up tiny scraps and making tiny quilts, which were also examples of the same kind of idea. So if I go closer, you'll see that all the quilting is done by hand. The applique is also done by hand. I did sew the blocks together by machine and the borders on by machine. And if you're wondering why the vases are not all the same way up, it's because this was designed to go at the foot of the bed. So that's where it was for a long time. But when we moved into this house, I thought I really would like to hang it on the wall. And it's just been lovely to enjoy it in this way. The birds are quite important, and I'll show you the label on the back. My mother was a woman of faith, as I am, and you'll see from the label why I put the birds on it. So I really love the colours. Some of the fabrics I used the wrong way up so that they looked more faded. I think it has faded a little bit over the years, but it adds to that look that I really like of the vintage quilts. And I guess it is heading for vintage now. I'll just show you the label on the back of the quilt. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a verse that says, "Not one sparrow will fall to the ground apart from the will of your Father. So don't be afraid, you are worth more than many sparrows." And I just felt that was a fitting tribute to my mother. Her full name was Hendrika Athena Niebuhr. Her maiden name was Holzebos. And my name is Hendrika, which is slightly different, and I've been called Rita, and so has she. Looking at the quilt on the bed now, I made this from scraps also. These were scraps left over from other projects. I'm not sure if any of the same fabrics are in this as in the quilt on the wall. People gave me scraps as well, and just while I was starting this, a friend gave me a whole bag of curtain samples. So that was very, very timely, and I used a lot of them in the blocks, and I also used them in the borders. And fortunately, it had several samples of the same pattern, but in different colorways. And you can see that the red and blue on the left turns to green and then blue again on the right. And what I did was I cut them so that I could match them up, so that it would look like a continuous design going right across, but with the colorways. And I've done the same on the other edge. Now this quilt is actually sideways on the bed, because when I made this we had a double bed, but now we've got a queen-sized bed and it didn't really fit, but I think it does work very well sideways also. Now if I just come around to this side so you can see the squares the right way up, you'll see that they all have names on them. Some of the family members couldn't be there because it was at the time of university exams, and several of our children and my siblings' children were in the middle of that. So there were a few that weren't able to be there, but the majority of us were there. And a family of 8 actually grew now to a family of over 50. So there are 3 generations now, probably not long before there's a 4th, which is quite amazing when you think about it. So the quilting was done by a professional machine quilter. I'm not sure if she's still in business or not, but if she is, I'll put a link to her page underneath this video. And I'll just show you the label. I called it a family reunion quilt, and my maiden name, of course, was Niebuhr, which is a Dutch surname, as I said, and my dad was John Henry, or in Dutch, Jan Hendrik. And the celebration was just lovely. We had really lovely weather as well, which was really good. And at the bottom, I've mentioned the quilter, Pam Jarman, who was working in Burnie on the northwest coast of Tasmania. She did several of my large quilts, and if you're interested, I will show you some more of the quilts that I've made that are in our home. Most of them have some special meaning. The cushion on the bed is actually vintage, and it was given to me by an online textile artist friend, and I mended it, and it sits on our bed during the day. It's very fragile. The embroidery is coming away from the background, so I would like to get some fine netting and put that over the top just to hold everything in place, and maybe do some invisible baste, but I do love it. And you'll see on the back of the quilt here that I've also used curtains for the backing. A green one for the centre and then the paler one for a strip down each side. And it really suits the front of the quilt as well. Every now and again I make some smaller wearable items. As you know, I do like making clothes out of things like vintage blanket and so on, and felted jumpers. If you watched my last video, you would see a garment that I'm currently working on made from a felted jumper or pullover. But I also like to do some smaller items. I do necklaces occasionally, and I also do brooches. And here are some of the brooches. I actually made a whole series of these, and these are the only 3 that are left. A couple of them I gave away for presents, and the rest have sold. But they're really a great way for me to use up some of my eco-dyed yarns. When I do my bundles for eco-dyeing, I often wrap the bundles in different kinds of string or yarn. And when I have some good strong wool yarn or even silk yarn, I will wrap that around the bundles tightly, and then the bonus is that they also take colour. And I save them and I make small things out of them. So these are crocheted. I made up the medallion style myself. Then I used my needle felting machine, but you can use a hand needle felting tool as well, to embed little snippets of lace and wool into the crocheted medallion. And that bonds them all together in layers, and it's so freeing because you just lay them on top and just see what happens. You don't try and pre-plan too much. And then I add some embroidery and some beads, as you can see. So I'll just show them to you one by one. I've mounted them on a piece of eco-printed paper, and I've stamped the word nest and the number in the series that it is. And then inside I've written naturally dyed yarn, needle felting, hand crochet, hand embroidery, hand beaded, and then my stamp on the back. I just thought that was a really nice way to present it. I've just pinned it into the card, I guess it is. So even if you don't keep this for yourself, it would make a lovely piece to give to a friend or someone special in your life. And if I hold this up, you can see the detail. The embroidery adds more texture to the needle felting, and you have to look quite closely to see it. I use French knots and fly stitch, I think, mainly for that, and occasionally I'll put in some other stitches as well. This is nest number 6, and you can see it's a slightly different colourway, and depending what kind of scraps I needle felted into it decided me on the colours that I was going to use when I embroidered it. And actually in that one you can see a little metal washer. I like doing that too. It's a nice little surprise sometimes for people to find when there's so much detail. And then the last one, and this has more blue tones, and again the little beads and the embroidery. So I really did enjoy making those, and possibly I will make some more. I usually make some kind of version of these every now and again, and they are available online at gonerustic.com. This is an eco-printed card in a square format. I made a series of these, and this is the only one left. A couple of them I used, the rest have sold. And I made a hexagon out of paper after watching Catherine Chambers demonstrate one in cloth on her channel called K3N Cloth Tales. And I thought, oh, I think that would work really well with paper. So I made quite a few of them, and it was really fun to do. And I have found buttons, most of which are recycled. And so I used one to embellish the middle of it. And then I just left the rest because I thought the eco print was so lovely it needed to just shine. And inside, and this comes with it, is an envelope made from recycled paper. And then I've stitched in some really nice quality art paper inside using wax linen thread with a pamphlet stitch. And you can see that it's got lovely eco prints inside as well, and also on the back. You can see Banksia and fern there, and here is mainly eucalyptus, and of course the dark colours from the dirty pot or the rusty cans. So you just get some lovely effects from that. There's a bit of a mark from rusty cans on that one. So as I said, there's only one of these left, so if you would like it, it's there waiting for you. This is an accordion book, one of a series of 4 that I made using various eco-printed papers. The collaged piece on the top is art paper from an art pad, and the accordion part is actually Khadi paper, which is a rag paper. And I really love using that for eco-printing and for different types of books. This one, I put a twig on it to embellish it, and I actually called the series Twig. And when you open it, it has different size pages inside. And these are a lighter weight sketchbook paper, which I've put in these than in the card that I showed you. And this is one of those continuous books. So each section has a different feature of the eco-printed paper that I did. And then you come to the back and you keep going, as I've demonstrated before. And there's a lovely Banksia print, and you have more pages to write on or collage into or sketch on, whatever you would like to do. So as I said, that's the last one, and I may make some more in the future, but of course they won't be the same. So that one is also waiting for a new home. I think I made 8 of these little books. Well, they're not so little, they're A5, so it's an A4 or letter-sized paper that I folded in half. And I discovered that eco-printing works really well on the paper that you buy to print photos in your inkjet printer. And it was just an experiment that really, really worked. And I collaged them with some handmade paper that I purchased. I didn't actually make it. And the cover of the book is made from Khadi paper. And then I used some more of the handmade paper inside, some sketchbook paper that has an interesting format for you to add whatever you wish to. And then I've put my stamp inside the back cover and a bit more information. So they all feature leaves from around our property. The one I just showed you is mainly eucalyptus. This one is blackwood leaves. This one is eucalyptus and bracken fern. And this one is also eucalyptus and bracken fern. So they'd make a lovely gift also for someone, or just to treat yourself. And hopefully having a handmade book like this will inspire you to be creative in it. I did stitch them together also with wax linen thread. This is another set of books that I made using the eco-printed paper for printing photos in your inkjet printer. These I actually added embroidery to as well. So that was really enjoyable. I do like stitching into paper. It's different to stitching in fabric, but it's a very enjoyable process. And then I used craft paper, brown craft paper, a fairly heavy gauge, to make the covers. And I used some vintage sheet music as well as the embroidered eco print. And then when you open it, you'll find that there are a variety of papers, including more of the firm craft paper, some dictionary page, a white page, some vintage sheet music, and just some interesting pages to add your own creativity too. Different sizes as well. And when you have the shorter ones that I showed you in the front, which you see here, they're great for adding extensions and tags and tabs and things like that. So just limited by your imagination, really. I used some wool and some cotton threads when I embroidered these, and I just allowed the print to inspire the stitching, and I didn't want to just outline them. I wanted to complement the print, so hopefully I've done that. And it was just so interesting to see how they all turned out, and then how that informed the actual embroidery that I did. And of course I have stamped and signed them as well. I'll just show you. So there's my stamp in the back and a little bit of a description. You'll find all of these items in the paper collection at gonerastic.com. So I have different collections, including wearable and so on, art and decor, events, and as I said, this is in the paper collection. These square cards are also in my paper collection. And again, I've collaged some eco-printed paper on it in 2 different sizes. I often have strips left over when I tear things down to size, and so they are really great for collage and to add a bit of interest to the design. I like asymmetrical designs as well. I have letter stamps too, and I stamp the words on it, and I love the way they're not quite even, and then my initials just to sign it. And when you open it, my business card, of course, and a bit of a description. And I made some envelopes for these as well. So I made these out of a square piece of paper, and these are all art paper with a bit of texture. And then in each one, I've included one of these seals, so you can seal the envelope. And if you're a regular viewer of my channel, you would have seen me show these when I first made them. So each one of them comes with that seal, and a card and an envelope come together. So there are a few left, and they're great for a special occasion too. So I hope you enjoyed looking at my paper collection. A lot of things have sold. All the papers that I eco-printed in the last video sold, and so did all the fabrics. And I just appreciate my customers so much. They have gone all over the world, to New Zealand, interstate in Australia, and to the US and to the UK. So I'm so appreciative of your support, and I'm so glad that they have gone to good homes. And as I mentioned, I would love to see what you make with them if you have purchased one of my things from the last video, or any of the things from my online shop. They're all made with love. I try to do them as ethically as possible, and they reflect where I live in Tasmania, which is a place that I really love and is my home. I just thought I would show you my letter stamps. I use these a lot in my work, especially on cards and books and so on, occasionally on quilts too, but I'm not sure how waterproof this ink is, so I tend to do it on things that are not going to get washed. So this is just an ordinary stamp pad. It's a black one. I've had it for years, and it hasn't got run out of ink yet, and I do use it quite a lot. And the stamps come in this beautiful little box, and it has letters and numbers in it. And if I open it, you'll see that I've got a bit of paper towel in there so I can wipe my stamps off after I've used them. And then all the stamps in the box, the lowercase ones here and the uppercase ones, and then the numbers and a few punctuation marks on the side here as well. And they are really, really useful. I tend to use the lowercase ones more, but you'll see in some of my work that I do use the uppercase ones too. I think I have used the uppercase ones in the Circle project. And I'm sorry I'm not sharing any more in my journals this week, but because I've been unwell, I haven't really done anything in them. I have done some stitching, which I will share with you later in the video, but otherwise I've had to have quite a bit of rest. If you've been following my Facebook page, you would see that I deconstructed some tea bags. I use tea bags to drink, of course, to make a drink, but I also use them for tannin solutions for when I dip my papers for eco-printing. So often they are used twice, once to drink and the next time as a tannin solution. And then the third use I find for them is to use them in my collage and other artwork. I also save the strings because they are actually coloured as well from being in the tea. And I think I will use them somewhere in the project I'm about to show you. And of course the tea bags. Most of these are Earl Grey tea bags because I do like Earl Grey tea, and they do give a nice colour and they open up really nicely as well. If you've been watching my videos, you will know that I'm hosting a very special exhibition this coming June called Shelter. And I'm inviting anyone, anywhere who likes to work with mixed media and stitch to enter it. It's only an A4 size, which is a letter size, so it's not expensive to post and it won't take you long to do. I thought that I would have a go too, so I've started one. And I've used some of my eco-printed silk. So that's the background, silk in the background. And I've used another piece in the central section here. And then I've used some of the tea bags that I deconstructed the other day as part of the collage as well. And then I added this strip here of naturally dyed wool because I didn't want it to be too predictable. The green is a fabric sample that I got from a Tasmanian business called the Spotted Quoll, which I've mentioned a bit lately, because I'm also using some of the fabric in my comfort coverlet that I'm doing, which I'll share you a brief update on as well. This nest I made out of Excelsior packaging, which I think is shredded wood, that came in a parcel, and I saved it. And then I stitched it onto a piece of eco-printed paper, just as an experiment, and then put it aside. And I think I did that before Christmas. But when I started to make this, I thought this might suit this piece. So I have glued and stitched it down just this morning actually. And even though there was stitching already in the nest, I've reinforced it with some more stitching. And all the pieces that I laid on it, I've started to stitch as well. So I've done mostly running stitch. And then on this piece of couch t-shirt yarn, which has been naturally dyed, I've also stitched it down using a couching stitch, which is really just a straight stitch. And then I decided that I would use this bit of cord, which I've had for a while, and freeform that down the side. And I've made knots in it and loops, and those loops are going to stand free. So one of the requirements in the Shelter exhibition is that you shouldn't have your piece too thick. So I made sure that this is no more than, I think, the 1.5 centimetres that I asked for in the guidelines. I have more ideas on what I want to do with this, so I'll keep stitching on it, and I'll share some updates with you as I do them. But I'm really enjoying the process. Yesterday I could only do 10 minutes of stitching before I had to go and lie down, but today I've actually done a couple of hours or more, so that's been really lovely to get back into it. On my social media pages, I mentioned that I'd decided on what threads I was going to use. And these are the threads that I said I was going to use. So 4 different colours. And I have used those 3, but not that one. And I may still use it, but I haven't used it so far. And I decided to add 2 others as well. So this one is lovely. This is a variegated silk thread, which I think you may have seen me use in other projects as well. And I used that for the quilting around the couched lines. And this lovely green and brown hand-dyed thread, which I think is cotton, I'm using to couch down this cord. The cord is multicoloured, although you can't really tell. It's actually similar colours to this thread. And I used this thread for the tea bags, but I found that it was snagging a bit when I was pulling it through the tea bags. But I persisted with it, and I think it suits the piece. On the back, and I'll just flip it over so you can see, I have a little bit of thin wadding fused onto it, and I'm stitching through the fabric and tea bag paper and this, and also when I stitch the nest down. And that's a lovely thickness to stitch through. And when it's finished, I'll trim it so that it's straight because it's gone a bit crooked from the stitching. And then I might do a pillowcase style backing to it and then invisibly stitch the back down so it doesn't balloon out. And then it will need a rod pocket to hang it up. But if you would like to enter the shelter exhibition, there are lots of ways to interpret that subject, and there are some ideas in the events section at gonerustic.com. And if you feel that you can create something, you can enter there. Depending where you live, it'll be a different fee, and that's because of the cost of postage, unfortunately. But if you choose in the drop-down menu which one applies to you, and it includes return postage so that I can return your piece to you once the exhibition is finished. It is held in conjunction with the Bay of Fires Arts Festival in Tasmania on the East Coast, and I'll have an open studio and exhibition during that time from the 7th to the 9th of June. I don't think I mentioned also that we're having a very big car show in our town that weekend. And quite often what happens is that the men hang around the cars and the women go and do the studio trail. So if you're in the area, it might be something you would enjoy doing. If you need to book accommodation, you'll have to be quick because it books out very, very quickly. There are thousands of people in the area for that weekend. So I hope you like what I've come up with, and I hope you enjoy coming up with your own ideas to participate in the exhibition. Just wanted to give you a quick update on the coverlet of Comfort or Comfort Cloth. This is the central panel of a much bigger piece. We'll be doing another piece this month in February. I haven't started mine yet because of not being well, but I've got the materials ready and I'm keen to get going on it. So this is the central panel and it's now finished. I mentioned in the last video that I still had to add some blanket stitch, and I've done that here. I've done a freeform blanket stitch, mainly 3 rows, but I stop and start and I go up and down and I catch the previous rows sometimes and sometimes not, and I really enjoy that way of doing blanket stitch. I used a lovely grey silk thread for that, which I used in other parts of this as well. And the other thing that was a prompt for the last week in January was to do diagonal lines, but I didn't do any more because I'd already done them. They come out from the circle or the spiral and make it look like it's spinning. So I didn't actually add any more of those lines. So I'm really happy with how this looks and I enjoyed it very, very much. I love the dense stitching on it and I think I'll probably do the same on the rest of the pieces. We'll see what happens.